I'm Asmus with the Rotochopper Customer Support Team. In this video, we will show you how to remove main rotor bearings on an MC, EC, or MP2 rotor. The reasons you might need to do this would be if the bearings failed, impact damage, or they're just plain worn out. Some of the PPE that you might need would be gloves, ear protection, face shield, safety toes, and a welding jacket. Of course, before we'd start doing any process with a cutting wheel or torching, we would have to make sure the machine in the area is safe. As you can see, we have the rotor out of the machine for this example, but we'd want to come over here and we'd want to make sure that around the main rotor bearing that everything would be clean and clear. We wouldn't have any dust or debris that could catch fire because there's going to be hot sparks and metal debris flying when we're doing this. The tools for the job would be a 4.5-inch grinder, maybe a couple screwdrivers and a hammer once we've removed the bolts from the main bearing cap. And we'd want to do lockout tagout before starting any part of this. Depending on the machine, you might have to remove the drive belt, belt shields, sheave, and of course the rotor bearing cap once we're finally ready to start doing this. Then we're ready to go on cutting the bearing off. All right, so now we'll take the main rotor bearing cap off. For right now we have the bolts out. Take a couple of screwdrivers, punches, anything like that that you can put in on the sides, and we'll take the cap off. Now that we can get at our bearing, we're going to make a cut on the outer race, kind of at a 10 and 2 position on the outer race. That way we can pull that race out and the roller bearings to get at the inner part. There's two ways to take a rotor bearing off. We can cut it, or we can loosen up this nut, tap it in and try and slide it off. The most effective way is to cut it. That's how we do it here at Rotochopper, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Now that we have two cuts made on this bearing, we can take this outer race, simply get it out of the way. Now I can get at my rollers or carriage on the inside. Now that I've made the cut on the roller carriage, I can take that assembly and get all the rollers out of the way for the bearing. Now I'm able to access the inner race and make a cut on that to slice it and get it off the rotor. But first, before I do that, I'm going to loosen up this nut, and that way we can get that out of the way. Now that I've loosened up this castle nut, I can take the grinder and make a slice right down the center of this inner race. And then you're going to hear a pop, or it's going to crack once it releases that pressure from that sleeve nut and washer. And I'll be able to use a jack to lift up the rotor and slide the whole bearing assembly off of the shaft. I don't know if you heard it, but right there it just had a crack, or it popped. So that's as far enough that I need to cut that. Now I can use a jack, lift that up, and slide this whole assembly off of the rotor shaft. If you're in the machine, you could simply put a small jack right on the roller carriage where we slide the screen cradle in and out. So now that I've made my cuts on this rotor bearing, I'm going to use a jack to just lift it up and take the pressure off of that, and then I can slide the bearing assembly off of the shaft. Now that I've raised up the rotor, it's taken the weight off of this bearing, So now I can easily slide it off of this. Now that I've made the cut and the inner race is loose, this bearing is movable and I can slide the whole assembly off the shaft. Now your rotor bearing is removed. You can clean up the rotor shaft, make sure there's no burrs or high spots, and we can go back to assembling and putting your new bearing on. In the next Rotochopper video, I will show you how to install a rotor bearing. For any additional questions, contact your Rotochopper support team. And remember, the well-maintained machine is always safer and more profitable. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for any additional videos like this.